Welcome to Sausage on a Fork, a podcast dedicated to the UK's longest running children's drama programme, Grange Hill. My name's Neil, and in each episode I'll interview a former cast member about their life before, during and after their time on the programme. So welcome to episode 3 of Sausage on a Fork. I'm very pleased to announce that this week we have Fiona Lee-Fraser, who played Laura Reagan. Fiona, welcome to Sausage on a Fork.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Neil. Yeah, thank you.
You're very, very welcome. Okay then, Fiona, we'll jump right in. A quick talk to start with it. How did acting start for you? How did you get into all that?
Well, I think for a lot of girls, it's a similar story. I started with dancing, so was sort of dancing locally, and then there were these big auditions for Bugsy Malone, and I know you spoke to Lee Spark briefly about Bugsy Malone because he did it at the same time. We were actually in the same cast, but we didn't really know each other because I was like a kid from Oxfordshire, so I stayed up there with a lot of the Bugsy Malone cast. In a hotel, and Lee was a London kid, so he was sort of going backwards and forwards each day. But so did that with the great Mickey DeLenz as the director, and that was such a blast. And at that time, I was at a convent school in Berkshire, and then of course doing Bugsy Malone, I met loads of kids from stage schools, and I just when we finished and it was the big low of the show finishing, I just begged my parents to go to a stage school, so ended up going to Sylvia Young.
Oh, brilliant. Right, excellent. Excellent. And what sort of, from Sylvia Young, what did you get much work from Sylvia?
Well, it was really bizarre actually, because from arriving, I was only there a few weeks. I mean, it was such a bizarre but great situation, because you would go to school, 2.5 days of the week would be dancing and singing, and then 2.5 days a week would be academics. But you could be sitting in academics and somebody just pop their head in and say, "Oh, Fiona, you've got an audition, be at the office in 10 minutes, and then you'd be off to Soho and out for the rest of the afternoon. Right. So it was just like one day somebody popped their head in, said, "Fiona, you've got an audition this afternoon, go to the office." And then, we would never know where we were going. Off we went to the BBC, and it was the first audition for Grange Hill. Right. And I'd only been at Sylvia Young for sort of 3 weeks at that point. And, you get so many auditions, you just learn to go on them, enjoy the fact you're out of school, and you don't really think too much about whether you're going to get them. And so the audition process for Grange Hill is that you probably get recalled about 4 or 5 times and read for the part and read with other people, read with Phil Redmond. So after 4 or 5 auditions, I got Sylvia said, "Oh, can you come into the office?" And she said, "Oh, you've been offered the part of Laura Reagan in Grange Hill. Would you like to accept it?" I was like, "What do you mean, would I like to accept it?" Yes. Oh my goodness. So I hadn't been there long, and then that was it. We started, and for each series you have an 8-month shoot time, and it was just absolutely phenomenal. But I think one of the reasons I got it, and Sarah, who played Julia, my friend in Grange Hill, we were so I was the daughter of the games mistress, Mrs. Regan, and she was the daughter of one of the governors, and I think they were looking for a couple of girls with a little bit more home counties accents, and obviously I came from a little village called Stoke Row in Oxfordshire, and Sarah was from Ruislip Manor, so we were sort of amongst the kids from Islington and who had much stronger London accents. We were more home county, so I think that kind of played in our favour, in getting the parts.
Brilliant. What was it like joining Grange Hill? Because I spoke to Ricky the other week, and you joined at the same time as Ricky. And you didn't sort of join from a first year. You were slap bang in the middle, and you were already supposed to be sort of established pupils in the school. What was it like when you joining that cast?
Well, it was I think so. We came in at what was the equivalent of year 9 that the kids say these days. And I don't know, none of us really knew why they stuck that year in, because we were the year below sort of Zamo's year. And they had some huge characters in that year, but they sort of threw us lot in. And it was, I had a slightly different experience to Ricky, because coming from Sylvia Young, I was already knowing other people in, you know, sort of from school, and a lot of the kids that did extra work were also from Sylvia Young. So I know Ricky had an experience where he was a little bit older than us. He wasn't traveling on the bus, the coach. So he had a little bit of time before he made friends. But so it was easier from that point of view for me, because I was coming in with Sarah as well. But my goodness, I mean, I was 7 when Grange Hill started, and my mum and dad weren't the parents that said I couldn't watch it. So I was watching it. So for me, you know, I was a massive fan of the show, and just to come in and see, you know, Leah MacDonald and Erkin and Alison Bettles, Lisa York, you know, and all the other guys was mind blowing. But you get used to it quite quickly, I suppose. And, you know, we're all when you're not filming, you're either doing your studies, or we were in a big green room together, which had a snooker table, pool table, you know, sort of chill out sofas, playing music, and we all mixed as a group, you know, hugely together. So it didn't take long before we kind of got over that, but it was amazing, absolutely amazing.
Oh, brilliant. So who are you sort of, I mean, you've mentioned Sarah already, but who are you closest to? Who are your best friends?
Yeah, I mean, I think you tend to be most friendly with the kids that you do the scenes with, I suppose. But, you know, as I say, we did all mix together. And so Sarah and I and Ricky and Simon, who then came in playing Freddie later on, we were very close. So Ricky, that couple of years older, he was the first one to have a car, the first one to get a flat. Right. And Sarah and I lived quite a way out of London. So once we were over 16, Ricky had bought his flat, which wasn't that far from the studios. So we would stay over there a lot. So we were really tight, the 4 of us. But yeah, I mean, we used to sort of, once we were over 16, we would do our kind of week of filming. And then on a Friday night, a lot of us would go out, you know, into the West End, and we would go, like, Friday nights was always Stringfellows night, and then Saturday night we might go to the Hippodrome or whatever. Yeah, so we went to Stringfellows for a long time, but until we had this situation where we'd all been, you know, we'd gone there, we'd all been given VIP passes, like, and one night there were probably about 10 of us in there. You kind of walked into Stringfellows. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's a very sort of dark little club, and on the left hand side was a sort of seating area, and we were there normal Friday night having some drinks, a little bit of, you know, sort of food, and Peter Stringfellow himself walked in, and he just looked at us. I mean, at the time we were probably 16, 17 in a club, and he looked at us and said, excuse my language, he said, who the fuck are all those kids? And somebody said, oh, no, it's fine. They're the cast of Grange Hill. And he said, I don't give a fuck who they are. Club. So that was it. That was our Stringfellows memberships gone. We all had to sort of hand back in and disappear. But so, you know, we went out as a group a lot, and we were all, you know, really friendly with each other. I had a real soft spot for, like, George Wilson, John Drummond, you know, John Alford. The naughty boys were so endearing. But yeah, we did all mix together a lot, you know, so we were all, you know, really close, which was lovely. You know, I don't remember in the entire time I was there any arguments, any kind of, you know, nothing like that. Everyone got on really well, and it was just, an absolutely fabulous experience, really.
Excellent. Was there anyone where you thought, like, you really enjoyed working with? You know, if you thought, I've got a scene with them today, or anything like that?
I think it only perhaps happened once. I had a scene with Fleur, who played Imelda. Right. And, you know, I hope you get Fleur on at some point, because she is just so far from Imelda. You know, she is lovely girl. And, but she was, you know, she was a really good laugh, and, you know, what a great role to have, because you could really get your teeth stuck into that. So if I ever got to do a scene with somebody a little bit different, you know, that was always nice. And of course, when you're doing scenes with people that you do scenes with a lot and that you have a relationship with out of the show, you're more inclined to get a little bit giggly.
Yeah.
And that did used to happen a lot, you know, especially there's a time of day, like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when the hysteria just kicks in. You know, it only takes one tiny little fluff of the lines and you're going to be in stitches. And then every time you try, you know, it's like those programs, every time you redo the scene, you get to that point and you lose it.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the fun of doing scenes with people that you know really well. But, you know, the director would be going absolutely spare because we had to get these scenes, you know, filmed. And the last thing they wanted was us mucking around. But I think, you know, on the whole, for a bunch of kids, we did kind of learn our lines and crack through it, which, you know, looking back on it is quite amazing, really. I mean, I guess a lot of us might be learning the lines on the coach up there on the day, but, you know, we all took it pretty seriously. And so I'm trying to think. I mean, also Michael Sheard, who played Mr. Bronson, I had one of my first scenes with him, and I had no idea, you know, who he was at the time. He'd worked with Laurence Olivier. He was, you know, he was a big time actor. But they would always be good scenes because what a great character. But we had a separate green room to the adult cast. And so we only sort of saw them in rehearsals and filming, but they were lovely, because we must have been so annoying. Like Ricky was one of the few of us that actually took his craft seriously. You know, the rest of us were a little bit there on a jolly, and it must have driven the adult actors absolutely mad working with us sometimes. But they were so lovely. They were really, really good about it all. And, so there
was a good relationship then between the kids and the adults then, was there?
Yeah, I'd say there was. Again, I can't remember any problems. They were really charitable towards us lot. And I think it probably helped they didn't need to mix with us too much. But, you know, the ones of us that we were over age and could have gone in with the adults, we still stayed in the kids. You know, I'm sure Ricky was in our green room quite a lot. It was all happy days, all very good.
Brilliant, because Laura did have quite a lot of scenes. Obviously, you've mentioned the fact that Laura's mother was a teacher at the school, so you would have had quite a few scenes with Lucinda Curtis, wasn't it?
Yeah, she was lovely, really, really sweet. And normally, so obviously we both had our kind of storylines with our boyfriend problems, because I was a child, Laura was a child from a separated marriage, and all was fine until Mrs. Regan had the boyfriend. And I was really pleased about that, because it gave me, I mean, when I look back on the episodes that I had as Laura, I did have a bit of a gob on for most of it. You know, I was never happy. I was always upset about something, you know, even if it was like the student council or the radio station or something. And when Mrs. Regan had the boyfriend, it gave me something to get really stuck into. And I think at the same time, Laura was seeing Banksy. And of course, he rode a motorbike. And I remember there was one scene I had to pull up on the back of this motorbike and then off again. And I was petrified. I'd never been on a bike before. We were only traveling about 5 miles an hour. But so she was lovely. And we had a 40th anniversary reunion fairly recently, and and she was there, and I mean, she's still absolutely lovely and wonderful. And I mean, I hadn't realized, because the show kind of went on for about over 30 years. I think you may know more than me. And I just thought before we were chatting, I would have a quick look on IMDb and just make sure I remembered everyone's surnames and stuff like that. And you know, when you go onto IMDb for Grange Hill, there are 1,800 cast members, over 1,800 cast members over that time. So there are so many people that have been through the show. And, you know, you just kind of remember your own little era, which for me, when I was watching it, was Tucker kind of through to Zammo. And then, of course, then I was in it. But yeah.
Brilliant. And do you have any sort of favourite storylines or episodes from your time on the show?
Oh, I think, the canal boat episodes, because we all went up to film those in Warwickshire for 2 weeks. So I think we stayed in Warwick University's student accommodation.
Right.
So we had such a laugh during that time. And we led the chaperones a right merry dance, as I remember. So they were really, really fun episodes to film. And I can't even remember what the storyline was. I remember a lot of Ricky and Jones popping up sort of behind the I think he'd already left at that point and he was trying to secretly see Georgina.
Yeah.
So we had quite a few scenes there, and Ricky kind of joining us, and yeah. So I mean, they stand out as really fun episodes. And then also the scenes that Sarah and I did when we were supposed to be secretly off at these all-night parties. Yeah. And we also had Alison McLaughlin, who played Louise Webb, in there, and she was absolutely lovely as well. And we had quite a few scenes with her and storylines when she also had an older sister, Cheryl Webb, yep. And played by Amma Asante, who's now gone on to be a BAFTA award-winning screenwriter and director. So, you know, we had some really nice scenes with them as well, and we would be, most of the time we were filming either in Elstree Studios, or there was so a lot of the exterior of the Grange Hill School is done in the exterior of Elstree Studios, but there was also another school we went to, and then occasionally we would actually get to go and do a night shoot or whatever, which tended to be around Boreham Wood, the kind of local area. So we had a few storylines with them around the time that their father died in it, and they were really just interesting, another interesting storyline to be a part of. So that was really lovely. Yeah, really great.
Good. You've just mentioned there about going to the all-night parties, and that's actually in arguably Grange Hill's most famous episode, when Zamo gets discovered, because there was 3 storylines going on around that time. And I just think for you must think, you know, it's really good that although you're not necessarily involved in the Just Say No story, you had another story going on in the same episode at the same time.
Yeah, they aired that episode recently, actually, and I knew the episode was coming on, and it was that iconic episode, but I didn't even remember that Sarah, my storyline, was within that same episode. Right. Because, you know, everything you're filming out of sync with everything, and you don't really remember what goes into one particular episode. So that was quite surprising when I saw that coming up. But you mentioned the Just Say No. I mean, that is one of the biggest regrets of my life, was that so the Just Say No thing was happening, and we all recorded this ridiculous album, which is hilarious. I wish I still had a copy of it. Right. I may go on eBay and see if I can find one. But so we did all of that, and I did sing on the Just Say No track. And then when it came to filming the video, it clashed with the convent school that I used to go to. Were going on their yearly skiing trip, and they said I could still go even though I wasn't at school anymore. And I loved skiing trip. So I said, oh, I'll go on the skiing trip. And my mum was like, are you sure you don't want to go and do the Just Say No video? And I said, oh, no, I don't want to miss the skiing trip. Oh my goodness. And then when they did the video and then they got invited to the White House, I was so gutted, because I actually had a really bad time on that skiing trip.
Oh,
and
right.
I was at the top of the Black Run, lost my nerve, and didn't want to ski down, and the ski instructor did that thing where they just kind of put you on their back and go vertically down the slope. And I never got on a pair of skis again until about 10 years ago. Wow. But yeah, so I missed out on that. That's why Laura isn't in the Just Say No.
Yeah, because
on the slopes of Austria.
I was going to ask you about that, because I noticed it the other day that there is a distinct lack of Laura Reagan in the Just Say No video. Yeah, that's well. That's why. Yeah, you've answered that one there. What was the public reaction to Laura like when you were out and about? Was it all okay?
I mean, it's weird. It's I think probably all of us will remember the first time someone clocked us. So you know, you go from, as I say, I was living out in Oxfordshire, and so I used to get the train back to Reading station every day. So, you know, my normal train ride, a couple of weeks after, I suppose, or maybe, a couple of weeks after the first episode had aired. So a few episodes had aired. And I can just remember sitting on the train and some school kids just sort of looking and then giggling and looking back again. And I thought, oh my God, I'm getting recognised. This is amazing. And then after that, it becomes, adults don't recognise you generally, but you get recognised by your peer group, which is a bit of a double-edged sword actually sometimes, because kids don't have the filter that adults do, and when kids are in groups, they're more leery, so you could actually get a little bit of bother. And if you were on your own and there were a group of kids, they'd be doing the whole din it then they'd start calling stuff across, and it was quite difficult to deal with sometimes. And I can remember a particular incident when I was out shopping in Reading with my mum, and this couple of guys, sort of a little bit older than me, started sort of shouting across the street. My mum was getting really stressed, and they were going, oi, they said, oi, ugly, where's your mate? Meaning Sarah. She was and is a very beautiful girl. And at that point, my mum was getting really stressed. And I thought, right, let's just head into John Lewis. They won't follow us into the sort of fabric section, but up they came. So in the end, I thought I'm just going to have to go up and confront them, because it was really upsetting my mum. And I actually just went up to them and said, hello, have you got a problem? And then they were really nice. And then they sort of walked off and left us alone. But you would get stuff like that occasionally. Yeah. And as I say, because we were all friends, we'd go out in small groups as well, which would mean that we were more likely to get recognised, I suppose. So most of the time it was nice. Some of the time it could be a little bit tricky. Going into McDonald's on your own was off the table.
Right.
Totally. It was just full of the demographic that would have watched Grange Hill. So, and I don't think even drive-thrus existed then.
Right.
Certainly no Deliveroos or anything like that. So McDonald's was a little bit hard for a while.
So you did 3 series on the program, 54 episodes. Ricky said that when his first series he was just intended to be in for 1 series, and he was invited back. Was yours? I imagine yours was slightly different. Was it? Were you going to be?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that I didn't even think about how long we were going to be in it, and I thought, well, odds are that we will carry on all the way through sixth form. And of course, because you're at a stage school, I was at Sylvia Young, Sarah was at Sylvia Young, a lot of us, Joanne Kenny, we were all, bless her, we were all there. So alongside Grange Hill, we'd all be doing a lot of other stuff. We had our school productions, you might be doing a TV commercial, whatever. So I mean, I didn't really think about how long we would stay in it. And we were quite a small year. So by the time, we got to the point where we left, I think it was only me and Sarah and Alison and Simon left in our year. And they said to us, if you want your year to continue, you all have to stay to go through. And I think Simon had already decided that perhaps he would like to go and do other stuff. And I wanted to do other stuff as well. But I mean, naively, you think, oh, yes, I'm just going to walk into other work. And so we kind of decided, Simon and I, that we were going to go. So unfortunately, and actually, no, Sarah had gone at that point. There was just me, Simon and Alison at that point. So Alison didn't stay either. But I mean, so that otherwise those characters probably would have carried on through. They did give us the option, but we, when they sort of laid it out and said, well, you've all got to go, we'll stay. We did sort of start thinking, well, maybe we'd like to do something else. That's why that year group ended up going. Yeah,
because there was no sort of real finale either for them, was that? It was, what was it? It was the fun day, fresh and fly, and then that was it, wasn't it?
And then that was it, yeah, and that was the reasoning, because they just wrote it as if we were going to carry on, and then we decided that we would all kind of give up our contracts, rightly or wrongly. But yeah, I mean, luckily, we went on to do other things, so it all worked out okay.
How did you feel about when you left? How did you feel about leaving without getting a sort of a proper send-off from the programme?
Oh gosh, didn't bother us at all, because you're so ingrained in your life. And Grange Hill for me, not because I wasn't really taking acting that seriously. I'd always thought I was going to be a dancer. And then, because the Grange Hill audition came up while I was at Sylvia Young, I ended up just doing acting because I kind of fell into it. And because I had stopped dancing regularly, I didn't end up going down that pathway. But, for me personally, and I think for a lot of us, the friendships and the personal relationship were more important than being in the show. So, at the time, Simon Vaughan, who played Freddie, and I we were together as a couple outside the show for about 4 years. Right. So we, it wasn't like I was going to leave the show and I wasn't going to see anyone anymore, because, I left. Simon and I were together for a long time after that, and Simon was living with Ricky and Sarah was around, and so we just carried on as our friendship group, which was the only important thing to me at the time, was staying friends with the people that I was friendly with, and we kept in touch with everyone. So and it was just, we replaced our Grange Hill day job with me doing Move It, and I still was seeing everyone. So it didn't even factor at all as to us not having any kind of storyline send off, I suppose.
Brilliant. Yeah. So 3 series after you've been on the programme, you leave Grange Hill. What you go and do then?
Well, so I was lucky. I got asked to present a programme called Move It. So Blue Peter always has a big summer break, and they put a programme in. And for a few years, they put this programme in called Move It. And it was a show where it was designed to encourage kids into sport. So every weekend, Simon O'Brien was the other presenter that used to be on Brookside. And we would. And
he ended up in Grange Hill, funnily enough, later on in his career.
See, I didn't even know that, Neil. So he was a really good laugh, lovely guy. So every weekend we would go off to another destination on a BBC budget, which was always horrendous, some dodgy B&B, and film some kind of kids activity. It could be ice skating or whatever. Whitewater rafting in Bala in North Wales. Wow. In fact, there was one episode that we did up in Lytham St Anne's, and it was to be filmed on the beach, and it was little remote control cars. Right. So it was the first episode that Sid Waddell had directed, the guy that used to do 180. It was his directorial debut, and so they decided they were going to build this amazing track on the beach in Lytham St Anne's, and so we went the day before. We did the recce, and they started building this phenomenal track, and then we all went and had dinner. We went, slept, woke up in the morning, the tide had come in and gone. So the whole thing, it had them about 5 hours to build this. It had all gone. So they had to start all over again. And so there was a lot of hanging around that day. But that was quite a fun show to do. And I did that for 2 or 3 years. Right. And then, theatre, some really eye-opening theatre. I did a production of Mandragola, a Machiavelli play, in the Southwark Playhouse, which is a very small venue. That was an eye-opener, because it was a great play and it had some really nice sort of medieval music in it, but it wasn't everyone's cup of tea. And I can remember one night they came round to us and said, there are actually only 4 people in the audience tonight. Wow. Who want to do the show. And the equity ruling is that if there are less people in the audience than in the cast, you don't have to go on. So we all had to take a vote whether we would go on and do the show for people, which we did. That was kind of actually the end of my theatre career, because I am a bit of a giggler. And there was another girl in the cast, Caroline, who we just got on really well. When you meet someone and you've got the same sense of humour and you just click. And we very quickly realised, amidst this very serious production, that we would just set each other off with the giggles. And we had all these medieval harmonies in this play, and one night we were sort of just about to go on, and she was backstage and she played the C on the piano, and we all sort of went for our harmony, and her voice sort of cracked a little bit, so I knew that I was going to get hysteria. So I thought, I'm just not going to sing the first bit. And she had exactly the same thoughts. And we went on, and neither of us sang because we knew we were going to get hysteria. So we walked on, and then we looked at each other on the stage, absolutely burst out laughing. They had to go to blackout. I mean, it was how unprofessional. So funnily enough, I didn't do a lot of theatre after that. I had to go into, I did TV commercials. Yeah, which was brilliant. Got to go to Spain a lot and Germany, and but Magnum was one of my one of my TV commercials that I did. So so that's what I ended up doing, and then I stayed in commercials for a long time. Yeah, it's a really nice side of the industry because you can work 2 or 3 days a month.
Right.
The same day. I kind of I was pretty much doing that, I think, until I had children, although I did have a little gap. I was really curious to see the other side of production. So I went to work for Ogilvy and Mather, which was a big advertising agency. They're just called Ogilvy's now. So I worked in a television department there, so saw commercials right the way through from, when you would get the client brief, all the way through to them going on air, and worked in casting for a little bit as well, and then started my own acting agency for children. So that was pretty much what I was doing, as well as the commercials, up until the point of having children.
Oh, wow, right. And then was it a sort of a conscious decision to move away then from the acting completely?
I suppose after I'd done all the production side, I still carried on doing the commercials, and then when I started the agency, that from that point I had to be on the phone, available for casting directors from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. So the acting kind of just naturally went by the wayside. And then that sort of coincided with having my first child. And at that time I had a girl on my books called Hattie Jones, and she got the lead part in the film Madeline for Columbia TriStar. So that was quite a busy time looking after Hattie. And she actually got down to the last 2 for Hermione and Harry Potter. Wow. So both of our lives could have been very different if she got it more so hurt. So then once, you know what it's like once you have children, your whole life shifts anyway. Yeah. And it's really, acting isn't a very easy job to work in with bringing up children. So when I had my second child, decided to retrain as a photographer as well, which I love doing, and still do now. And it's just a much easier job to kind of work in and out. I went back to acting for a little while and did a Sillet Bang commercial. Right. But the audition process, it's one thing when you're 18, 19, 20 auditioning for directors who are sort of 25, but then when you go back to it in your 40s, and it's just, I found it a little bit it's a little bit more humiliating to sort of go through the audition process. And I thought, no, I've been there, done that. I'm going to stick with photography. So
you've mentioned sort of Sarah and a couple of others. Are you still in touch with those people? No, you're still in touch with people from the show?
I was round at Sarah's a few weeks ago with Ricky.
Right.
And Simon Vaughan had a big birthday fairly recently, so we got together there, and I saw a decent amount of people at the 40th reunion. And of course with Facebook and stuff like that, it does kind of keep you all connected, which is lovely. I might hear from Erkan occasionally. So and I'm sure if they'll probably have a 50th anniversary, and we'll all be there. Going every 10 years and to the point where we're wheeled in. So from that point of view, it's really nice to kind of see what other people are doing. And George Wilson again is another. He's a lovely guy, and so I follow him quite heavily on Facebook and sort of keep in touch with him as well, which is lovely.
Just a few more questions then, just before we bring this to a close. Other than Laura Reagan, who is your favourite character on Grange Hill?
Who's my favourite character? Well, I mean, Mr. Bronson was a great character, really, really great. But somebody I had a real soft spot for was, I don't know if you remember, there was a character played by George A. Cooper, another great actor who ended up on Grange Hill, who played like the janitor role. And he had some great stuff in there and was such a likable character. So I would say, George's character, I had a real soft spot for him. And I don't think I ever had a scene with him, but he was one of the adult actors that really made time for us and, you know, chatted to us. And because he had a lot of scenes with the kids as opposed to the adults. And he was a lovely, lovely guy. So, I would say his character was a favourite of mine, definitely. Right. Yeah,
Mr. Griffiths.
Mr. Griffiths.
Which other character would you have liked to have played if you hadn't played Laura Reagan?
Oh, definitely Imelda.
Right.
Yeah, I think, you know, everyone wants to play a baddie.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah, I'd love to have played that part. Yeah, but no, I would never have played it as well as Fleur did. She was absolutely fantastic.
She was,
and she had she had the hair at the time, that kind of like punky sort of hair. Oh god, yeah, that would be definitely the part I'd like to have played. Yeah.
Excellent. And then the final question, Fiona, is why do you think after all this time there's still such a big affection for Grange Hill? Why do you think people like me are still talking about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I think it's partially because we had 3 channels at that time, didn't we? So, you know, it was, I don't know about you, I used to come in from school on a day that I wasn't working. You would stick on BBC One generally, wouldn't you? And it would be, you know, you'd have Grange Hill, you'd have News Round, Blue Peter, whatever. We all watched the same thing then. And Grange Hill was groundbreaking. I mean, when you think of the storylines they covered, you know, for Phil Redmond to think, right, I'm going to do a drug storyline and not think, well, I'm going to do marijuana, I'm going to do heroin. You know, I mean, that was the type of show it was. And that was the reason a lot of kids, a lot of my friends weren't allowed to watch the show. So, you know, what amazing storylines for us as kids to grow up. You know, you either identified with it because you were in a comprehensive school where all that kind of stuff was going on, or like me, coming from a convent school with all girls and then a stage school where that stuff generally wasn't going on. You would just look at it and think, wow, oh my God, how amazing to go to a school like that. And it was, you know, we all watched. It wasn't a case of there was Netflix or other stuff to watch. We all watched it. We all were drawn in by very, very well written characters and storylines. And, you know, and because the show went on for so long, you know, we all watched it for a good sort of, I suppose, 5 to 7 year period of our school lives. So you got, and generally people didn't leave. So those characters, you saw them growing up whilst you were growing up. And, you know, it's like that with TV characters. You feel like you know them.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it was a fantastically groundbreaking series. I think now they're too scared to do generally the kind of stuff that Phil Redmond pulled out the bag. And I mean, I think some episodes had about 15 million people watching them, which is absolutely mind-blowing. Yeah. So, definitely. I mean, I hold it in the same affection as you do, because for my years that I was watching it from Tucker through, it was, you know, absolutely loved it. Yeah. So it was an amazing thing to be a part of, definitely.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Well, listen, Fiona, thank you so much for agreeing to come on.
Yeah, no, pleasure. I love what you're doing. I love the other 2 episodes, and I look forward to hearing whoever you get on afterwards.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for those of you that are listening. I'll speak to you next time.